World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War. And for those who may not know, my name on my birth certificate is William Anthony Rogers. And for many years, I've taught the Art of War and wrote about the Art of War by Sun Tzu, his book of strategy. So it's kind of a play on some of the things that I've been doing for some time. I am happy to have today a brother that I have the utmost respect for and the work that he's doing in information technology and providing a way for people to leap over the digital divide. In the early 80s, while at City College, I developed the program, the Harlem Partnership Center, in conjunction with Columbia University and City College, to produce the first technology program to the Harlem community. It was a 2-day conference. And at that time, information technology was not necessarily on the to-do list for a lot of people and companies and even governments in many cases. But it was considered to be a convenience. Now, it's a necessity. And if you are not aware of how this new technology works, then there's no way that you can compete in, as they say, the new world order, I guess. The person who has become the guru in Harlem and actually the world, because Mr. Banks travels all over the place based on his knowledge. He co-founded an organization, Silicon Harlem, which is the major hub of allowing for people young and old to begin to understand how to get past the digital divide. He's also the chair of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce's technology program, which provides a platform to deal with people who are influential with technology and connect them with entities, whether it's colleges or businesses, organizations, and the like, that need to have that access. We'll talk a little bit about that, and also a conference that's coming up that if you haven't registered for, because it's going to be limited, I'm sure, I would suggest that you do that because there's a lot of new things happening, jobs, opportunities, and also for businesses, how to secure yourself. So I would like now to introduce a brother that is doing a lot of good work, and a good friend, and a person that if you don't know, you should know. You probably know about him. You probably have used some of the benefits that he has done as relates to technology and applying it, especially in the communities of New York. Mr. Clayton Banks, CEO of Silicon Harlem.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. Let me first say what an honor to be on this show, and I do get a chance to, use my voice in a lot of various ways. But when you come on something like this, when you're using the term urbanology, I hope everyone who's listening, urbanology, I learned that phrase not until I got in college. And when I heard that phrase, I was fascinated by it. And I never knew somebody would actually make it into a network like Rogers has done. But certainly, if you don't know what urbanology means, at least from my perspective, it truly is the study of urban problems. And so I'm all in that. I'm 100% in that. I believe that most people are living in urban markets, are trying to grow families in these urban markets and becoming successful, have a good life. And so for me to be on this platform under the title of Urbanology fits. I'm ready. Let's talk. Let's put this out there, and let's all work together to make it a better urban living situation through urbanology. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, Clayton, again, we can praise each other all day because we got a lot of stuff that we can praise each other for. But the important thing is to allow for people to know some of the things that we've been talking about for years. First of all, though, some of the new listeners, I would like for them just to learn a little bit about you and also about Silicon Harlem.
Well, thank you. Well, so me, co-founder of Silicon Harlem, and the Silicon Harlem company is really focused on how to improve life in general in Harlem, starting in Harlem. We have really a hyper focus on technology to ensure that our community and all communities around this country get the access and exposure they need to ensure that they're living in great conditions, that they're part of the future, that they don't fall behind. All those things are done through Silicon Harlem through 3 or 4 key things. One is we have a very powerful and certainly a commitment to education. So whether it's preschoolers to seniors, we're constantly trying to bring the information people need to know, at least from a technology perspective, because everything's being impacted by technology. So that's one of the key pillars of what we focus on. So you might find a class through us. You might have a summer program through us. We have that available. Second, we work very hard working with nonprofits and ourselves on create what we call workforce development. So if you're looking to reskill, find a new way to get into this space of technology, we provide that access. Number three, and probably the most important one, is we are committed to making sure everyone has broadband. You can't do any of this unless you're connected. That's a human being thing, right? That you have to be connected. So providing broadband is very critical. And lastly, I would say we are very, very clear on what the ecosystem requires. You need to have the electives behind you. You need to have your stakeholders in your community behind you. You need your academics behind you, all your colleges and high schools and everything else. You need essentially your overall people, right? You people have to get behind their voice to it. And finally, we would look at research to be a big part of it. No, they're otherwise always looking at what's coming. And so we're very connected to a variety of private and public organizations to know that we hear and know what's going on so we can provide that information to, our citizens across this country. So that is what Silicon Harlem is about. That's what I am about. And I look forward to speaking with anyone on these type of issues.
And we'll make sure that we allow for people to know how to do that and to know about the new office that is incredible that I had a couple of opportunities to go to. And
No, wait a minute. You were dancing in there. What are you talking about?
Actually, you had to, it was funny. There's this device. Talk about technology and how it's just doing all kinds of things. Actually, I was pretty much just moving, but the way the device is, it spins around and it makes you look like you're doing all kinds of things, which, you're just doing a certain type of a move. So
wait till I release that to the world. I'm going to let everybody on this call, I'm going to make sure you get to see this. See, you're going to have to see Tony Rogers getting down in my office. So we got to make that happen. It was hilarious.
But it's a lot of stuff. But again, Clayton, when I started talking to you and I learned about your background, what impresses me is that you had a life where you didn't have to do this type of work. You made a lot of money in the private sector doing a lot of things that some people would just continue to do that and then be out on an island someplace, cooling out. Running Silicon Harlem, working with the chamber and the tourism board and the community boards at the city and the state and all of that. That's a lot of work, but not to tell all of what you have done in your past, but just give a glimpse so that people can understand what I'm talking about and why I believe your commitment is genuine, because you don't have to do this.
Well, very quickly, if you want to look at it from this perspective, I had a very fortunate upbringing with my parents, my father being a lifelong military man. I learned very early on, growing up on a military base, everyone's the same. My father's, his rank determined his salary determined where we lived on the base. As a result, everyone in my neighborhood had to made the exact same amount of money. So there was never this thing of you're this or you're that. We were just a bunch of military brats. And when my father retired and I was about 9 or 10 years old, it would hit me very hard of how different life is when you don't grow up in that space. I know I was in a bubble. I realized I was in a bubble. When people don't grow up in that kind of environment, it can sometimes be a struggle. So from that time on, Tony, I was like, how can I fix this? What happened here? What's going on with the world? And so I was like, I'm going to fix this. And then, I became kind of militant once I hit college when I went to a school that had less than 1% Black people at the school. And I was just like, wow, what is going on here? And so I had become somewhat really sort of focused. And then as I got out of school, I was like, you know what? I still am that guy that realized everyone's the same. And I need to really sort of embrace that and share. It came down literally on access and exposure. I ended up in the entertainment space. I worked, like you said, in the private sector, made plenty of money, and it allowed me to ultimately start to look at how can I help areas? How can I help communities? And having my first home that I bought was in Harlem, I said, you know what, let me just start seeing what's going on with Harlem. How can we help the area that I live in? And I just really wanted to make a commitment to that. It wasn't about how much money I might make or not make. It didn't matter to me. It was like, I have a lot of information. I have a lot of access. I got a chance to work with the President of the United States, Bill Clayton, and he and I did a whole campaign around getting young African-American boys and girls into college. It was very successful. We went on CNN, the whole thing. So that was early on. And so it's just, these things became really interesting to me, that I have this access and exposure, and my job is to make sure I get it out there. And that's why Silicon Harlem became a company, is because Bruce and I were both very much in technology. We didn't see a lot of people of color in the space. And at the end of the day, we were just going, well, why don't we just try to at least see if anybody else in Upper Manhattan would be interested? And we threw a meetup, and you've been to our meetups, Tony Rogers. And so our very first one, we were hoping to get about 25, 30 people to come out. And that night that we had our very first meetup at NIST, what was it? I think 300 people came out. And that's when we realized, wow, this could really happen here in Harlem. And from that point on, we've been very focused on those things that I talked about earlier, and what our principles were and what we wanted to do. And it's working. Harlem is the fastest growing area, not only from just a development perspective, but from a technology perspective. We are the only area of New York City, the only area of the New York State, the only area in pretty much the whole country that's been designated by the federal government to be an innovation area. That means we're allowed to do exceptional research, exceptional programs. That's a formal designation. And I like to at least feel like we were part of that. So yes, we are making a difference.
Again, Clayton, those points that you made, obviously, that is the focus of Urbanology, creating a way to coordinate a strategic plan that involves all of the players, the religious community, the education community, business, and the like. And again, what is happening now, especially as I get a little older in age, is that seniors are becoming very, very much involved in this technology, because their survival, whether it's employment, whether it's health, whether all of the things. So the program that you do during Harlem Week, educating seniors, I've seen that grow. But what you're saying, Clayton, I remember in Harlem Week many years ago, when I was trying to get technology as part of the college's continuing education program, and no one thought that would work. So during Harlem Day once, we had a questionnaire of what could be part of the continuing education program. And we had at least 300 people, and this was saying that they would be interested in understanding what technology is. So what you're saying with Minisync and the computers and the seniors doing computers because they were helping their children or their grandchildren because the parents weren't there. Of all of the things that you're doing, that senior program is something, I guess, because I'm a senior now.
Well, it's one of my favorite things to do. It is absolutely one of my favorite things, because it's not what you're saying, and what I like about it, and why I started with this conversation, why I started with Urbanology, is because we're simply, on those shoulders, right? I'm not starting anything new. What I am trying to do is move it forward. So right now we're working on even how we create currency in Harlem. Why? Because what we've heard all of our lives, how a dollar comes in the community and that dollar leaves the same day, rather than rotating in many other neighborhoods. And so one way to try to do that is to create our own and let Harlem help Harlem, right? And this will be our next conversation when we have our next interview. I want you to bring me on to let me talk about Harlem Coin. But the point I'm making is that's not even new. Everything seems new because it's digital. But, during the Depression, Black folk in Harlem were doing bartering, right? They came up with a creative way to save their lives. It's like, hey, I'm not getting food. Okay, well, I'll barter with this for you to get. I'll take clothes. You take this pot of beans, whatever the case may be. So now we can do it digitally and we can do things a little bit more different, but it's the same process. So I read a lot, and I certainly do a lot of historical thinking. If you remember, one of the senior citizen, we like to call them seasoned citizens, but we ended up having a conversation about how to code, right? Mm-hmm. Teaching seniors how to code. That's not the easiest thing. But when I said to them, it's like making a cake from scratch, they got it. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is not new. This is not new. It's just a matter of adopting the idea, but it's still the same goal. Ultimately, I need to make something faster. I need to get something cheaper. I need to make my life better. All those things are what are related to all of these things. So I am 100% clear that we now have a program to help seniors even just learn how to use a computer, period. We have a program. We just finished one this summer. We also do the things, like you said, with Harlem Week. We talk about all types of things during the Harlem Week Seniors Day. And we love it because everyone has to be connected to this. The problem in the ecosystem is that young people make all the stuff. So they don't think about a senior when they're making it, right? They're like, oh yeah, let's create these autonomous vehicles. Well, they haven't thought about a senior citizen in that space, right? Or whatever the technology is. The only where that there's been some area of considering the seniors is in the health, to your point. But even that, the ones who are designing it and programming it, pretty much in their 20s and 30s. So they're missing a lot of things. So we need the seniors at that table in order for us to get this right.
Exactly. And those are the things that, for the listeners, I'm talking again to Clayton Banks, the CEO of Silicon Harlem. Those are the things that is very important. We had some conversations. We talk about unemployment. We had some conversations, and we're leading up to a conference, and we're not going to forget about that. But before we get to the conference, we have to allow for people to understand why they need to be at the conference.
Come and meet me.
Which is true.
That's part of it.
There, and we had this conversation behind stage, and we have certain meetings with the chamber and a number of groups. And Clayton was part of a program at City College. And tell us about who was there and what the economic development opportunities came out of that particular program, which is another issue in itself, the Charles Rangel initiative. But give us a little understanding of where the jobs may be in technology now.
Well, I had the great honor under the host of Dr. Vince Boudreau, who is the president of City College.
The City College,
and partnered with our Congressman Espaillat and invited the Secretary of Labor of the United States. And I was invited to be in the room, and I had a great opportunity to speak in behalf of what we all do and what all of us are doing. And one of the comments made by the secretary was, this guy reports directly to the President of the United States. You'll see him standing right next to the President of the United States when the President is talking about anything around workforce. This guy said, we need 700,000 people for jobs in cybersecurity over the next 5 years. We're not building tanks and guns anymore. if you want to cripple a country, you go digital. You go after their database, you go after their data, you knock out their systems. That's how you cripple a country. Now, Russia might be a little old school in doing some tank and guns, but trust me, they're going after the digital aspects of a country in order to cripple that country to take it over. And that's not the major point. The major point is there's jobs. There's a lot of jobs coming and a lot of jobs open right now, even in New York City, where you can look at the district of attorney's office constantly looking for more people. And these are jobs that will be most, if not all, have to be people right from this area, right? You can't have people from another country or another area to come and protect you. So you want to protect you and your people around you. And that's what this is about. So the Secretary of the United States, the Secretary of Labor of the United States, who's saying us, listen, if you guys have people, here's the good news. You don't even have to have a college degree. Don't get me wrong. I want everybody to get a college degree. But you don't have to have a college degree to get a cybersecurity job. You have to go and get certified. You have to make sure you know what you're doing. But you can learn that in very little time. It's a sustainable job, right? Because once you fix a cybersecurity attack, there's another one coming. So you will always have a job, and it's good money. It's like really good money. So it's a huge opportunity for our urban market. It's another impact that comes off of Urbanology and Silicon Harlem, that we actually can get those kids who may have a different set of skills and a different kind of vision. We can help them reach their goal through something like this, cybersecurity. And we can do that. So it's a great opportunity. We're going to talk a little bit about it at our upcoming conference. And I know Tony Rogers is going to talk a little bit about, and certainly we will talk about the jobs that are available across the board, including cybersecurity. But there's a lot of really good opportunities coming up, not just in technology, but infrastructure issues. All of you have been reading about the $1 billion, almost $1 trillion bill that the president put out that was really focused on infrastructure. There's going to be jobs everywhere, and urban is going to be really important.
And, the other part of this for people who are listening, Clayton and Silicon Harlem provides not only the information, but also the research. Two things. One, when you talk about hacking, whether it's a business or whether it's a city or whether it's a country, that's happening. You might not hear about it because they don't want to, get copycats. But a lot of entities are being held hostage, and they have to pay. Else, there's nothing else that they can do. So that's one area as far as why there are so many jobs to learn how to do that. The other area is our health. There are many different things that now technology has a tremendous hold on. And Clayton, during Harlem Week, we had Emily, and I can't think of her last name, but she was with the group from the city that are planting trees throughout New York City. And as I had mentioned to you, the Bloomberg administration planned on doing that, but planted the wrong tree. As it relates to there's a female tree and there's a male tree. If you plant the wrong tree, which they did, you're going to increase the pollen issue rather than the decrease it.
That's right.
I had mentioned that to Clayton, and Clayton says, well, we know where every tree is based on technology. So by bringing them together, it will allow for us to make sure that all of the trees in our urban area are not those trees that are going to create more of an issue with pollen and asthma and the like. So that's how, again, this urbanology, technology, all of those things work together. And the more we are able to understand these things, we have a person now who has the ability to say, let's take it out of the conversation. If you're serious about doing this, here's how you do it. And
What you're saying, Tony Rogers, which is so incredible, and I know we can talk all day about this issue, but I want to reiterate what Tony Rogers is saying. We have a database of every single tree in New York City and what kind of tree, and as he mentioned, whether it's a male or female. Probably some of us didn't even know there was such a thing. Every single tree. So what that allows us now as citizens to go, this is great. However, in my neighborhood, I don't have any trees, or I only have a few trees, or I have too many trees. We actually can address those issues in a granular way now. Took years to make this happen, but every single tree has been tagged, and we know every single tree what it is. So to what Tony Rogers is talking about, the South Bronx and Harlem are maybe the highest level of asthma in the country. Do we want that? Do we just accept that? We got to do something about it. And trees is part of the solution. They're not the only solution, but they can help. And so that's why these technologies are so important, because, I grew up, like I said, in a lot of television and stuff like that. And we thought content was king. We used to say content is king. And it is a very powerful thing. But what's more powerful in some degree? Data. So if you have the data, you're actually able to make a solution. You can create a solution. You still got to use your own mind, but the data gives you a compass, and content is important, no question about it. But I always say content without data is simply dumb. so,
So Clayton, we have to follow up on Emily, and I'll get her last name to make sure that
yes,
we're doing
please.
the right thing with that, and I'll take the lead on that. Tell us a little bit about the upcoming conference.
Well, it's a perfect example to end the call here. At the end of the day, we have a conference every year, and this year we obviously is the first time in a couple of years that we're having it physically at the Great Schomburg Library in Harlem on 135th Street and Malcolm X Boulevard. So if you're in the area and you have an appetite, go to our website and make sure you register. So the registration is free. If you've been on this Urbanology call after November 15th, it's not going to be free. So you got to be able to get on it now, right? So the conference is called Future Ready Communities. This, again, as the idea I mentioned up earlier, the fact that Hurricane Sandy, the pandemic, even the things you're seeing down in Florida, there doesn't seem to be a good plan to make sure these people are ready and that our communities are ready for a disaster. And I'm not saying Future Ready is only about disasters, but I am clear that we could be much further if we start thinking about what we can do to help our people through technology. It can come from planning perspective, as our mayors and our electives need to be doing a hyper level, right? Because new things happen all the time. There's so many, to your point, that, companies that shut down other companies, they got to pay a ransom to get their data back. That should tell us something. We've got to figure out how to future secure our communities. And when you come to our conference, you're going to hear about health. You're going to hear about education. You're going to hear about transportation. We've got some of the great minds of New York there. We got Reuben McDaniel, who reports to the governor and is overseeing not only the infrastructure of the New York State, but he's also now got a portfolio of cannabis and a bunch of other things to try to drive new ways for people to can have businesses and draw that kind of economy. We've got the city sort of what is the deputy mayor, Maria Springer, and she, similar to Reuben, will be talking about infrastructure of city, and she also has a portfolio around cannabis. I mean, it's an amazing round people. The CTO of New York City will be there. We're very excited to see Peter Norton, who comes to our conference every other year and comes right out of the University of Virginia. We got sponsors from Google and AT&T and all types of people. You have to be there. We got a roster of Black women that are entrepreneurs. They're going to talk about their experience. You got to see this. I'm telling you, it's going to be crazy. We've got people talking about all types of things, and we're going to end it with all that you learned that day. How do we essentially create that future readiness? And I will personally be on that panel. If you don't do anything else, come hang out with me. So, but I'll be there all day and I'll be doing all this stuff. But it's going to be a phenomenal. We even got one of the fathers of the internet. Who knows about that, right? Vince Cerf will be opening up the whole conference. So you want to be at the beginning also in the morning. So yeah, it's going to be a big deal. We really hope that everyone will come. We made it free for sure up to a certain date, because we want as many people who haven't had a chance to really connect with people in a long time. This is that moment. This is our moment. It's on October 21st. Write it down, October 21st of 2022. It starts at 8 a.m. You get I think you get breakfast and lunch without paying nothing. This is all free. So we're so excited. We are really investing in you, and you will come out with more information than you would ever expect. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Tony Rogers, for giving me that opportunity.
Well, again, and we'll repeat that. And as you indicated, you have to register because the Schaumburg has been so big. So based on some of the other things that I've seen in larger spaces, that you have to make sure that you're there. And I believe you said that there's a cutoff date for the free, and I think you might have said November, but
October 15th.
Right.
That's the cutoff. You can still come, but you're going to have to pay.
Right. But even if you have to pay, it is something that what amazes me when I go to these conferences is that I learn new things. You
will learn.
There are certain people I will never forget, and I think the sister is still here in Harlem now. The sister who created a soccer ball that would allow for children in Africa to create energy by playing soccer, because it would generate enough power to run lights. That was one of the most fascinating things that I've seen. She's still in Harlem now. Is that?
She's now all over the place, but she is getting ready to buy another house in Harlem, and she is moving her company forward. As you know, she does a lot of work in Africa as well, because they have such a poor electrical grid. So using her process allows young people to be able to do their homework at night when the lights go out. So if you've never heard of Jessica, you look her up. They have incredible technology, and they're doing a lot now with a lot of infrastructure. So they're exploring new ways to increase the grid across the country. So yeah, I think that's a perfect example that you learn that from seeing people like this and hearing seeing people like
and
this.
knowing that they're here, and knowing that that's the whole idea of Silicon Harlem. There are a lot of people that not quite like Clayton Banks, but there are a lot of people in our community that are on top of technology. I would like to, as you know, I'm starting to do a lot of work, especially in Senegal and now in Ghana. So I when Jessica is back in the city, I would like to talk with her, because I think that that's something that could be very helpful in some of
to make those international connections.
Yeah.
We put up the link on the screen. If you guys can see it, if you're on a screen, we put it up on the link to the registration. If you're not able to see it, we will also, I can tell you what it is, but it's probably going to be easier to give you my email. So if you want to email me to get the connect to our conference, write it down, Silicon Harlem. All right, SILICONHARLEM @gmail.com. All right, that's how it gets to me, and I will make sure you get the link to get the registration, which is you want to get it before the 15th of October. Otherwise, you got to pay. And when you don't want to do that, you want to get it for free. So we do share that. We just put up the email as well. So siliconharlem@gmail.com. Just say to us, hey, I want to get the link to the conference, and we will send it right out.
One of the things that we were talking about developing international connections, I'm still looking to connect you with a counterpart in Senegal, Innovation.
Go!
And when I go in December again, I will reiterate that. One of the things, and I haven't, we move each other. I figured when I interview Clayton, it gives me a chance to talk to him about some of the stuff also. But one of the ideas, Clayton, that there are two. One, I have received emails from India indicating that they could develop a website for $200. They could, put it together and all of those types of things. My thought pattern is that why couldn't young people from Silicon Harlem work with some young people from, let's say, Senegal to do a similar type of a thing, which is one of the thoughts that I had as it relates to this whole need for more people to develop websites and create websites. The other thing that I have talked with Matt McCoy and a number of others is that we're looking to create a special porthole for the Harlem hospitality and tourism industry. The Harlem Tourism Board's goharlem.org. The thought pattern is to have a site that you go to and you'll be able to see whatever is happening. Hotels that are coming in, events that are taking place, if restaurants that are coming about, different types of projects as you start to come in. As you know, billions of people have eyes on Harlem. Harlem is one of between the first and the third most sought after place of people outside of the company based on NYC and companies' concerns. If there was a website that allowed for people to do that, and I believe that the Harlem Tourism Board, there may be others, but with the Harlem Tourism Board, our relationship with Silicon Harlem, the Chamber, and a number of other things, we have the connections and relationships that actually really make that happen. And based on some of the conversations that we've had before about how you can monetize sites, it could be a very important way to empower the restaurants, jobs there. But why I'm saying this is because you sparked my interest about the Harlem coin.
That's another.
That's another. So I'm kind of saying this in order to put us into this a teaser for another show.
That's
because
perfect.
If you combine all of those things together, that has a whole nother way of again, as you remember, the Harlem Partnership Center was a collaboration from City College and Columbia University, which we can do then with community-based organizations, Silicon Harlem. So we have everything, all of the dots are there. We just have to, put them together. But for those who, we need to talk a little bit more about how people can get to you outside of the conference. Obviously, we're going to talk about that, but how can young people, or how can people, if they're looking to understand what we're talking about?
We're physically embedded in Harlem. So if you want to, get into one of our programs, we have after-school programs and things of that nature. We also are building up some time for seniors in our location, so there'll be hours for the seniors to come, and we have computers and cool things that you can look at and learn and stuff like that on your own. And then sometimes we actually have formal sessions. So it's a great opportunity and a great space for anyone to come over. You can email the siliconharlem@gmail.com. That's the best way to communicate with us, siliconharlem@gmail.com. It's on the screen for those who can see it. For those who cannot, write it down, siliconharlem.com. And it's a great opportunity. We can sit down and talk. You get to meet some of the other people. Certainly can do stuff. And more importantly, I think we're going to always be out in the community. So you'll find a program, you'll find something that we're doing, whether we're partnering with somebody like the Chamber, as Tony mentioned a few times, and others. So we have a big roster looking at 2023 programs that we're going to try to put out into the environment. It doesn't always have to come to our office, and it'll not just be for the conference. We want to make sure that we are constantly, and we actually have just created an additional nonprofit called See Better Foundation, which you'll learn more about that at the conference. And See Better is already doing workforce development. So if you know someone that might need a job or a new skill, or maybe yourself wants to learn more about technology or whatever, all that is going to be available in 23. So we're very excited about it. It's going to be the greatest year, probably one of the greatest years of all of our lives, 2023. All right? 2023 is going to be one of the greatest times because we're going to create our own economy. We're going to move our young people into the space of technology to the degree they have interest. We are going to address the health issues that have been plaguing Upper Manhattan, particularly around drugs, which are being consumed more by people who don't live in Harlem than those who do live in Harlem, because it turns out that a majority of the methadone locations are in Harlem. That's a whole nother conversation, Tony Rogers, but I'm just saying.
I did a story about that,
23 is going to be one of the greatest years of our lives because we finally get a chance to address all these things, because I'm no longer messing around with people. I'm coming straight. I'm not going to be milky wilky on any of this stuff. It's time to get really focused. Please connect with me. Let's make this happen.
And again, we have the data, which you can't argue. You can talk about this is not right, but when you show them it's not right, with the data that's there, it's dead hard to argue. But Clayton, I again want to thank you. And before we leave, one more thing I would like for you just to talk about. You said earlier, and correctly so, all of this is fine if you have access. What are some of the projects that you've been working on and see that can happen in the future that will provide this goal that I think we all have, is to have people to be able to have access to the internet and technology?
There's a few things that we've come across that has worked. There's plenty of things that don't work. But one of them, a project that we're working on right now, and all projects that we're working on, which seems to be working for us, is to make sure that the community knows what we're doing. Right? So a lot of people do stuff and you're walking right by it and you don't know what the heck is going on, right? Some of us are quite curious and may ask, but a lot of the community is not even involved. So when they put out the Link NYC kiosk on our streets, I asked them to please bring one up to Harlem and make sure that we see it before you deploy it, which they did. We had a big meetup around it. I made sure as many people as I could that, this was an infrastructure coming in. As a result, we have more of those in Harlem than any other part of the city. And that became a great way to bridge a gap, right? A lot of people don't have internet in the home. So they could actually connect out to one of the Link NYCs of applying for a job or addressing something with their doctor. All those things could be done. First time in history, right? It has become less and less important because more of us are figuring out ways to get the internet. And that is the next thing, which is how we could essentially get everybody to the internet, and maybe one of the impediments is just price. So we created a research, got money from the National Science Foundation to put a research that we're still working on, which is called Edge Cloud Computing. What Edge Cloud Computing allows us all to reduce our costs because the infrastructure is in the community. And what that allows us to additionally do, for those who are old school on this call, if you're old school, you might remember a thing called a mainframe. And a mainframe was the infrastructure of all connectivity, and you would have a dumb terminal on your desk. And the good news about that was, and like we're doing this research on, you don't need all the components inside of that device. All the devices are at that mainframe. Well, we're trying to say, hey, what's old is new again, right? So what if we build an edge cloud computing situation where all the information, all the software, all the resources are in that edge cloud, like Google does, right? A lot of us go into Google to get our Gmail. That's in the cloud. Everything's in the cloud. So we create a resident area cloud right in Harlem. So now you can get a computer for like $20 instead of $300-400 or more. So you now have just reduced your price. You have a sustainable infrastructure in your home, and all you need now is to be able to log into what we used to do, what's called a mainframe. You log into the edge cloud computing, and it's like it's right in your house, right? You're able to get all the software, you're able to do all the connectivity. So we're doing all that research now, and here's the most important part of it. We created a community advisory board to give us, feedback on what we're doing. So that's why we haven't deployed it out yet. We wanted to hear from the community to say, hey, we'd rather have this or we'd rather have that. It's called community governance. So that's a big part of what we do on the regular, and we always will do that. Make sure that the community knows what we're doing, add their voice to the governance, and ultimately feel like they own it. And that is going to be a game changer. In what year? 23.
And again, Clayton, the understanding of what you just said, just to sum up, we're saying that there's an opportunity for 700,000 jobs, and the person who is in charge of that, there's a relationship with. We're saying that there's training available from young people, like the hackathons that we do, into senior citizens. We're saying that there will soon be an opportunity where the digital divide will not be dividing unless you want it to, because you have access as well as the equipment that you need in order to do that. Exactly. So the only thing that can prevent you from moving ahead is you. And those are some of the things that we'll start talking about as far as deprogramming people and all of those other things, which you can do online too. But those are. It is very important for those who are listening to understand what is going on and how you can be involved. We have Soul City. Soul City this is a national program. People, what we're talking about, it might happen in Harlem, but it will soon be throughout the country. That's the plan. That has always been the plan, whether it's Harlem Week, whether it's the stuff that we're talking about. Harlem has always been that place where it started, which is why we do this in Harlem, but Harlem has always,
There's Harlems everywhere, and it's our job to ensure that no one gets left behind. And so that's why if I could just say one more thing, if you are listening, you have to be listening if you just heard me. But for those who are here right now,
you can hear it, but not listen. We want to be listening.
Now that's true. Share this, whatever this is, that's going to be put out there so that this could be shared, because this information everyone needs to get. So whether you get involved or not, that's not the point. But please share it with everyone you know, that they should see this interview so that they can connect with Urbanology in Silicon Harlem and all of us that we are talking about of stuff here, Matt McCoy. Connect with us, because we're really doing something. Why? Because 23 has to be the greatest year of our lives. It sets a new platform for all of us across the board. Please share this. I'm serious about this, and I never have said that before. So please share this, and we will all get involved. I appreciate the time, Tony Rogers.
And thank you, Clayton. And this interview will be posted on the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce's Facebook page. I'm sure through Silicon Harlem, it will go up there, the Harlem Tourism Board, and of course, the Soul City. So it will be up so people can see it. We'll send people to it because the conference is, of course, important, but there's something larger than the conference. There's a plan to begin to allow for the technology to work for us. And I believe, Clayton, this is one of the first times we have had this type of opportunity.
It really is.
And not only have we had the opportunity, we have the Soul Cities, the WACRs, the newspapers. We have the ability to let people know however they might obtain information, whether it's online for the younger people, newspapers for the older, or whatever. So let's make sure that we support. And of course, last but not least, when you go to soulcity.com, it's a not-for-profit. We need to support soulcity.com. We need to support what they're doing because without our support, they can't help us. So, Clayton, thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Between you and Matt, I am learning a lot about stuff. So there's, I did an article. You can teach old dogs new tricks because the brain never dies. Take care, Clayton Banks.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Of course, we'll talk again, but please register so that you can come to this conference. It's going to be outstanding. And if you can't come to the conference, go meet Clayton.
Thank you very much.
Take care. This is Tony Rogers ending what I believe was one of the most important interviews I've had in a very long time because it talks about a plan that can be used in many different ways that will affect young and old, not only in Harlem. The foundation of what we're talking about can go not only throughout this country, but as we had mentioned before, I'm looking to have it spill into Africa and other locations so that we can come together. So again, thank you, Matt McCoy, Soul City team, for allowing for us to have this platform in order to bring this information to you. And I hope to see you next week. You take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Urbanology.